Well, hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us for this session on growth in the payment sector. And growth is depending on 5 things, I think. You mentioned some of them already. It's the technology, it's the people, the workforce that you need, it's the markets, it's your customers, and it's the competition. Right. So the first question I have on how to facilitate growth is on Khadijah and on Alex, because I think you have a shared offering. You both offer the facilitation of payment solutions, but you address different markets in terms of international markets. You're more focused on Africa, and you're more focused on Europe at the moment. Yeah, so what is the biggest opportunity that you see in growing in your respective markets? Maybe, Khadijah, you want to start?
Okay. I'll speak specifically to the Nigerian market, for starters. Essentially, there's in excess of a $500 billion economy, and literally 1% of it is online. A lot of it is still driven by cash or some invisible offline payment method. So it's not even where the opportunity lies, it's how much of the opportunity are you able to take on. You know, we see that more people are moving online. There are people that use Paystack, and it's essentially their first ever transaction with a card. You know, so just seeing that there's a lot to do around educating the consumers themselves to trust online payments, encouraging businesses that people like to use to come online as well, and then facilitating that exchange of value, I think, is a key way that we're looking to take on that opportunity.
Yeah. What's your share on that one, Alex?
Yeah, I mean, the payments industry is an ever-growing industry. There are trillions of dollars on a yearly basis being spent, of which only about 12% worldwide is online. So there's more than enough room for competition in this industry. But what we like to bring into this space is the ability for merchants to very easily be able to transact and define their process and their customer journey. So we see ourselves more of a facilitator rather than a competitor to the payment solutions, because we bring them customers and we give them exposure to different parts of the world. So there's more than enough room for innovation in this space.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Henrique, you're trying to get into a market that's taken by some big companies already. So you want to take their position, drive them out. What's the biggest challenge in achieving this goal? Is it investment? What's the biggest challenge for you to grow? What do you need the most?
So I think that the incumbents, they pose challenges on multiple fronts. I think the biggest of them being the scale benefits that you get in payments, that when you're really big, you can get some partnerships, you can get some economics, you can get some things that when you're a startup and you're trying to grow, you just can't do it.
Yeah.
So I think that the importance of venture capital plays a big role there, because it allows you to take some more aggressive stances against the competition, versus if you were to be always like super, as let's say, cost conscious as you would like as a startup, it would be hard to compete in a few parts of payments. So for example, in our world, the biggest challenge is on credit card points and rewards, right? And in the US, it's super big that you spend and you get a bunch of airline miles. And for example, in the US, we can't give United Air miles because it's an exclusive contract of Chase, the bank, right? So how do you break those things and you create a product that's valuable enough that people stop caring about that and care about the things that you build, but also maintain yourself competitive, that they get something out of your card. So I think that's like one of the tougher competitive challenges compared to the incumbents. But then just company building in general is always a challenging, right? I imagine for you guys also hiring great engineers, right? Yeah. Putting management in place, scaling, all of that.
Very difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah. Would you both agree on the VC, on the investment side, that that's necessary to grow?
Absolutely. I think the money is obviously very important, because it gives you that reach that you didn't have, but also credibility and exposure. A lot of these VCs bring a very wide portfolio. And what they do is they put you in front of that portfolio. They give you that exposure and that credibility. And that's just as important, having enough money to develop your products, obviously.
So you're saying that the right investor is giving you the credibility to be successful at the market?
Well, they give you that first introduction, if you like, that perhaps you want to speak to a particular company, or you want to reach a certain level within that company, and you wouldn't be able to do that unless you had somebody behind you who can open that door for you. So VCs also do that for you.
So if a VC gave you, say, $50 million now, what would you spend it on to grow?
For us, it would be marketing and sales. That would be the main expenditure for us, because it's something that costs a lot of money, takes a lot of team. You need to have a very experienced team behind that, because it's a full-time job. And again, it's all about exposure. In our case, our product is continuously being developed, and we can always improve it, and we are, but definitely marketing and sales is what we would do.
Khadijah, what would you spend it on?
I would say primarily on our market expansion initiatives. So Africa is a very fragmented market. There are entirely different sets of rules operating in each country. So you need to incorporate, put down some shareholder funds. Like, there are things that cost money for you to even get started. So definitely it would go into expansion. And then the other thing is just like helping us be better able to afford the kind of talent that we're looking for. I think that's also key for us. But yeah, essentially those two, along with everything else that comes with building a startup. Yeah.
Right. So how did you get the right workforce? I mean, other than applying for people here.
How'd you get what?
How do you get the right workforce?
Oh.
If that's the limiting factor, so if we say it's money and it's people.
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends where you're based. In different countries have different challenges. We're based in southern Spain. And we're very lucky to have very experienced developers close by where we are in the Malaga region. And it's actually quite cost effective as well. But for us, building the technology was always our main focus. And again, finding the right people with the right talent can be tricky. But if you look around, you find them.
I mean, it also depends on what new technologies you need to integrate. I mean, if you look at cryptocurrencies that are around there, you might need very specialized talent.
Yes, that is true. I think for us, it's a little different because a number of people are trying to find opportunities elsewhere. So yes, you may be able to find some of the generalists in the space. But then finding specialists has led us to expand our net beyond immediate shores. Like, our head of growth is from Ghana. We have a PM that is American. Like, we're essentially building a global company now, so not restricting ourselves to our immediate environment. So it's a lot of connections to the right people that help us access the kind of talent that we're looking for, and just like being extremely intentional about it. I'm happy to say that I've stalked a few people that ended up joining us as well. So it's almost like by any means necessary. Yeah.
So Henrique, for you, how do new technologies like cryptocurrency impact your business?
So how do I deal with the technologies?
No, how does it impact your strategy?
Honestly, today, because we're so focused on B2B, it doesn't impact too much. I think that cryptocurrency's penetration around B2C is getting even deeper and deeper. B2B is still on the early beginnings. But our thesis is that because we basically rebuilt our entire technology stack from scratch, we don't depend on any kind of like legacy players. If there is a world where cryptocurrency is mainstream for the B2B, we will be the company that can integrate it faster than everybody else. So we actually would prefer that to happen than not to happen because of it, but today it doesn't impact our business too much.
Anyway, okay.
Okay. And how do you deal with the different technologies? I mean, you just mentioned in your talk that you have like 250 different ways of payment. I would think that some of them are used very rarely. So that's kind of a legacy that you have, but you still have to keep it up to date.
Yeah, I mean, we built our technology from the ground up as well 4 years ago. Everything is built using microservices, and it's all cloud-based. So the way we did our platform, the way I designed it originally, was that it was very much a kind of plug and play. In fact, we called it plug and pay. The idea being that you can integrate a new API for a new payment solution regardless of what type of methodology you need, and you can very easily plug it into the system like a module, take it out, update it. But we have a dedicated team to integrations, and they spend day in, day out updating integrations and adding new ones. But we're already working on a new extension to our platform that will automatically maintain those integrations for us. So when a merchant uses our platform, they don't have to worry about different versions, a legacy code or anything. It's all up to date.
And how would you handle that, Khadijah? Because you also mentioned that you're expanding your business, not only the payment transaction, but also offering services.
Yeah.
Doesn't that increase?
I mean, I think it's pretty similar to how everyone else operates. Everything is essentially API driven. So we do the grunt work behind the scenes, which is integrating to all the partners and all the payment channels and systems that are required, such that it's presented as a core service with a single API to the merchant. Fortunately for us as well, we built everything in-house with our highly skilled technology team. So we don't really have to worry about legacy systems, at least not yet. So yeah, I think we're a long way from having that problem, I would say, yeah.
Okay. And if we think at scaling the technology system that is behind it, and we just mentioned or briefly touched the IT security system, what are the major threats and challenges that you face?
Well, for us, PCI compliance is the one thing that we have to maintain, and that keeps you up to date, if you like, because we have monthly penetration tests, and we actually contract third-party companies whose job is to make sure that we are as secure and up to standards as possible, as well as following the OWASP guidelines and whatnot. But I think with us, we host all our technology using Google Cloud, and we have replication services in AWS, Amazon. So we rely a lot on their own procedures and security as well. We kind of offload it to them as much as possible. But in the payments industry, generally speaking, as long as you are up to standards with PCI compliant and different ISOs, you tend to be okay. But it's a daily job. You have to keep it up.
Right, but if you want to scale, also the service providers that you work need to scale. How do you ensure that you are both in sync?
Well, with us, it's a question of keeping the APIs, as you said before, up to date. I mean, whatever we do in our platform has nothing to do with the payment solution or the service that we provide. It's a simple API integration, so we don't depend on each other. And with us, as I said, we keep technology up to, well, we keep pushing technology on a daily basis, and we make sure we host our services on the best providers that are out there. So.
Yeah.
For you, Khadijah?
So we see ourselves just, I guess, if you're in payments, then you're essentially a security company as well. Yeah. Thankfully, there are standards out there that guide the operations. So entities like PCI DSS already require you to adhere to certain security standards. And then everything you do on top of that is an added bonus to protect your business and your consumers. We also operate in a very highly regulated environment. So there are certain requirements we need to keep up with from the regulator as well. But beyond all of that, we employ, Amazon services as well, for firewall protection. We carry out penetration tests also, some audits internally. We use threat stack to identify some other things regarding people trying to simulate our services and just like block them as well. But interestingly enough, I think the biggest challenge security-wise in the space that we operate in is on the consumer side. So there's a lot of phishing sites out there. There's a lot of people that are trying to get your card details or payment information, and the consumers are not as well educated as we would like. So we're having to invest very heavily in consumer education as well, just to help them protect themselves as much as we're able to protect the businesses. And I think lastly, we do some support services for the merchants that we work with, just like helping them audit their systems as well to say you should probably do this way instead and do that way instead to protect yourself. So like I said, being a payment company is like being a security company. You're not only looking after yourself, you're looking after the merchants that do businesses with you, and then looking after their customers, which are the consumers that are paying on your platform as well.
How would you handle that, Henrique? You're entering the market, and you need the support of the customers. So that they trust in you.
Yeah, I think that, as both they said, I think payments has a pretty high bar for security of the whole PCI thing. The only thing I would add to that was the scope of PCI is usually like sensitive card information. So like the card numbers, security codes, etc. And you don't want to have your entire company under that scope, because then you can't do anything, because you have to, like PCI literally says, you have to write documentation and get approval for every change in code that handles like that security. Yeah. And your company will never run if you do that. So I think that you have to have all the PCI standards that you need for your sensitive information, but you can't forget about having like some really solid standards for the non-PCI data, but it's also very important that is your customer's name even, right? And like all their like personal information and your transactional data, even though it's not with the card number. And I think there's some work to be done on building a security protocols for those parts as well. But I mean, if you follow PCI for an entire company, like you're more than okay. Like it's a really, really high standard for security.
That's the technology side of things. But I mean, for you, it's the perception that the customer has of your company.
Correct.
How do you win them over so you can grow?
I think that like payment companies, we can piggyback a little bit out of Visa and MasterCard's brand. Right, so we issue like Visa cards. Visa does a really good job of saying around the world that Visa cards are secure. So I think that actually plays a big role. But other than that, I think it's about being transparent with your customer about what information they're collecting, how you're storing it, showing them all the certificates, because people who know a little bit more, they're going to dig in and their opinion, like they form opinions around other customers, and they know if you're not like with your stuff in place.
Yeah.
Okay. So now we've spoken mostly about the challenges and the pitfalls that we have, but what are the biggest opportunities that you see to really achieve a high growth rate?
I think the biggest thing is just really in the markets. Like, we're barely scratching the surface. There's like businesses and people that desperately need these services. So that is the biggest opportunity. Being able to help them facilitate this exchange of value essentially helps us grow. So it's a no-brainer. That's where we're going to focus on, and that's where the biggest opportunity lies for us. Yeah.
Alex?
For us, I'd have to say alternative solutions. Anything that's not credit card based, because there are more and more people using alternative solutions every day, especially localized payment solutions, so that our merchants can avoid cross-border fees and issues with settlements and whatnot. Because at the moment, credit card is still the main payment method. But when you start really looking into different localized places and regions of the world, you get to see many local solutions that are growing and growing. I mean, some of these e-wallets have, over thousands of customers using them on a daily basis, depending also on the sector. I mean, we come from the gaming industry and travel, and you get such a wide spectrum of solutions. And that's where we see an opportunity, especially going outside of Europe, South America, Africa, Asia, where credit cards are hardly used, really. You get a lot of mobile payments and stuff like that, and that's where we see a huge opportunity.
Speaking of Asia, if we look at China, 80% of the people already use the mobile payment solutions. But how would you, well, it's not your direct competition, but how would you integrate with services like Alipay or WeChat Pay?
Well, we already offer those solutions. It's networking, doing a lot of roadshows and finding the right provider. I mean, in many cases, you can't go directly to the solution, so you need to go through an aggregator. So basically a company that facilitates, because there are some solutions that require you to have a specific certification or a legal entity in a specific region of the world, so you go through an aggregator. That's how we do it, basically. But we have the whole of Asia covered.
You have Alipay and WeChat
Alipay, WeChat, China Union Pay,
That's interesting to find out how you did it, because I would have suspected that Chinese companies would stick to themselves. And
I always say that, well, Asia wants to expand to Europe. They want to, offer their solutions to different parts of the world. But I always say the payments industry is an incestuous industry. Everybody moves around, and you get to know everyone. And so it's easy. Well, I'm not going to say it's easy, but you get to network, especially at events like this, and you get to meet the right people. And actually, you'll find that they're very openly, willingly giving you the APIs so that you can use them.
So, Henrique, maybe the final words from you for the opportunities for growth.
I think that big opportunities are on the integration of what were traditionally payments companies and then software companies. Usually those things used to go separate. So in our case, like there was the credit cards and there was expense management software, and like we united both. And I think within payments, there's a lot of opportunities in which you do not only the payment side and the financial side of it, but you add like a few components of software that used to be decoupled. and integrated, but like verticalized into the same piece. And I think you can create like a much better experience and create like a lot of product differentiation from that.
Well, thank you so much for being on the panel.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank
Thank
you.
you.